Can I start by asking you to explain to our viewers your government's thinking on why this move was justified? Why is it going to benefit the state to up the ambition?
Well, financial markets are increasingly seeing climate risk as investment risk, and we don't want to put at risk any investment coming into New South Wales. So this is an economic play, a play to build a stronger and more prosperous economy. That's exactly what we're doing. It's a plan that will create jobs, it will drive investment into New South Wales, it will lower people's power bills, and it will underwrite our state's prosperity into the future. So we're taking full advantage of these huge opportunities that are emerging. In fact, this presents the biggest economic opportunity that we will have ever seen in this country, whether it be in mining or industry. There are going to be jobs, there's going to be opportunities and an abundance of prosperity because of the plans that we're putting in place.
What do you say to coal communities, to those who might be nervous about traditional industries? Is there still a future for industries like coal and gas?
Well, the reality is that under the Paris agreements, that every country is responsible for the emissions that come from their own jurisdictions. Now, the majority of our coal goes to overseas jurisdictions, and the reality is that the majority of our trading partners have committed to achieve net zero emissions. So those coal communities, those coal jobs are going to be determined by decisions overseas. What we need to do here domestically is make sure we're diversifying our economy, we're grabbing the opportunities that new industries, that are emerging, and we're making sure that we're safeguarding the present and looking to the future, which is exactly what we're doing here in New South Wales.
What do you say in response to those pointing at the coal price now, including some federal nationals saying that this can't be justified, the move away from fossil fuels, particularly coal, with the demand for coal still registering record prices?
What I'd say, Kieran, is those people aren't living in the real world. In 2007, Kodak was one of the most profitable companies on the planet, and they refused to go digital. And by 2012, they were filing for bankruptcy. The reality is, we need to make sure that our economy is looking at the risks that are coming our way and that we're preparing for them. That's what we're doing here in New South Wales. We see where the future is. We see the majority of our trading partners are moving towards a low carbon future. And the opportunity for Australia is huge because there is nowhere in the planet better place to take advantage of those opportunities than right here in Australia. We've got some of the best renewable resources anywhere on the planet. So we can help those international economies power themselves with our low carbon resources, with our renewable energy. But we can do more than that. We can manufacture the materials that are going to be needed to also help those economies right here because of our renewable resources. We can provide the green steel, we can provide the green aluminium, and we can provide the green hydrogen that is going to be needed in a low carbon future. And in addition to that, there is going to be a mining boom like we've never seen before. Today, 70% of the lithium used in Tesla cars is found here in Australia. And that will only grow when the uptake of electric vehicles happens. So we are going to see more jobs in mining. In fact, BHP has said that there are more jobs in mining getting to net zero than there are in not getting there. We should take this opportunity, we should grab it, and in doing so, we'll set ourselves up for an even more prosperous future.
You've been able to bring the Nationals with you, the Premier and yourself, in making that case. John Barilaro, of course, signing up to this arrangement. How have you done that when the federal government remains divided on this issue?
Well, this is a huge challenge, and huge challenges require leaders to step up. And that's exactly what Premier Berejiklian and Deputy Premier Barilaro have done. John Barilaro understands that no one will benefit more from these decisions to decarbonise than rural and regional New South Wales. Our renewable energy zones, for example, which were backed in by the National Party, will see over $32 billion worth of private capital going into the bush. That means jobs, that means new industries, that means new opportunities. So the National Party has not supported this just because they care about the environment. They've supported it because they want to see the regions being turbocharged with investment, turbocharged with lower electricity prices, turbocharged with opportunities. The Deputy Premier has stepped up to the plate, and we need other leaders to step up and follow.
What's your treatment of agriculture within this target? Is it excluded from some of the requirements?
Well, right now, we're projecting that we will hit emissions reductions of between 47 and 52% based on the current policy settings that we have here in New South Wales. So that doesn't see any penalties for agriculture. What we will be looking to do, though, is supporting our farmers, supporting the agricultural industry to take advantage of the opportunities that are emerging. We want to incentivise farmers to adopt new technologies and new practices around soil sequestration and carbon farming, for example. We want to ensure that they're more productive and more profitable, and we'll put money on the table to ensure that that happens.
Do you call on the Prime Minister now to commit to net zero ahead of Glasgow and also to step up their 2030 targets?
I want to see the coalition government leading in this space nationally. I think the Prime Minister has been outstanding in standing up, in showing leadership when it comes to protecting our defence capability, in protecting our security. I want to see the Prime Minister and the Federal Coalition show the same leadership when it comes to tackling climate change, because doing so will leave us more prosperous, and there's a huge economic advantage in doing so.
And in that context, what sort of target should they look to? Should they be looking to 50% by 2030 and net zero by 2050? Are they reasonable national goals?
Well, absolutely. I mean, net zero emissions by 2050 is a must. That brings us in line with our closest friends and trading partners like Japan, the United States and Europe. This is exactly what we need to do. And just as we work closely with our friends and allies when it comes to protecting our security, so too should we work with them when it comes to protecting our planet and our prosperity. And Scott Morrison is doing great work in bringing the coalition along on this journey, and I'm confident that he'll get there. But we need to get to net zero emissions, not just for our environment, but also for our economy. There is a huge economic dividend to be had. There are new jobs, there are new industries, there are new opportunities. And no country on the planet will prosper more than moving early and moving decisively than Australia. We can get this done, and we should lead the world and persuade the rest of the world to take strong action heading to Glasgow, rather than waiting for the rest of the world to persuade us and lead us to taking action.
And if the federal government doesn't, you know Sydney well, and there are some independents moving in seats like North Sydney, Mackellar, one obviously very successful already in Warringah having secured that seat, on climate issues. Are those federal seats at risk if the federal government doesn't move, in your view?
Well, I think we need to reflect the will of our communities, and certainly the community is telling us that they want to see us working to build a stronger and more prosperous country, and taking action on climate change can achieve that. So I'm confident that this can be done by the coalition. Coalition governments have always been about building a stronger economy. We know that there are huge risks coming because of this global move towards a low-carbon future. Rather than being caught and being hit by those risks, we need to take advantage of the opportunities that are emerging to set ourselves up for a more prosperous future. This is completely in line with what coalition government's about, which is why New South Wales is moving very strongly in this direction.
And finally, the former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull says history is written by those who show up. Do you think the Prime Minister should go to Glasgow for the climate talks?
Well, the leaders of the nations that we're closest to are turning up to Glasgow. Joe Biden, Boris Johnson, they're leading in this space because they know this is critical for our planet. It's also critical for the state of our economies. All of us have an obligation to hand the planet to the next generation better than we found it. And in doing so, we need to ensure that we also hand a planet that is sustainable when it comes to creating jobs and growing our living standards and prosperity. That's exactly why Scott Morrison needs to go to Glasgow, to turn up, to represent our interests, to argue for stronger action on climate change, because it's in our economic interest to do so.
Minister for Energy and Environment in New South Wales, Matt Kean, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kieran.